He was the one man I had spent 3 years trying to defeat, and the last person I ever expected to find standing outside my apartment at midnight, asking me to spend one night with him. Not because he loved me. Not because he wanted a relationship. He looked straight into my eyes and offered something that sounded almost cruel: one night, no promises, no feelings, and by Monday morning, we would go back to being enemies. I should have slammed the door in his face. Instead, something inside me whispered that this night might change everything. Before we continue, if you enjoy emotional stories about second chances, unexpected love, and people discovering what truly matters, please like this video, share it with someone who believes people can change, leave a comment, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness for more stories that remind us that sometimes the person we fight hardest against is the person who understands us best. My name is Claire, and for 3 years, my professional life had been defined by one name, Daniel Hart. We worked for the same company, competed for the same promotions, and somehow managed to turn every meeting into a silent battlefield. If I arrived early with a proposal, Daniel had already prepared a stronger one. If he won a client, I found another. We smiled politely in front of our managers while secretly keeping track of every victory and every defeat. Everyone in the office knew we couldn't stand each other. What nobody knew was that Daniel wasn't simply arrogant. He was carrying something behind those cold eyes. I had noticed it in small moments. The way his expression changed whenever someone mentioned his father. The way he sometimes stayed in the office long after everyone had gone home. The way he never attended company celebrations, never spoke about his personal life, and never allowed anyone close enough to ask questions. But I had my own wounds, and I wasn't interested in understanding the man who had made my career feel like a constant competition. Then came the night everything changed. Our company had lost one of its biggest clients, and both Daniel and I were blamed for the failure. We had worked on the account together, but neither of us had been willing to admit that the real problem had been poor leadership above us. After the meeting, I walked out furious, convinced my promotion was gone. When I reached the parking garage, I found Daniel leaning against my car. For once, he didn't look smug. He looked exhausted. He told me that he had discovered something about the company, something that could cost both of us our jobs. Before I could ask what he meant, he surprised me with an entirely different proposition. He said that he had been offered a position in another city and would be leaving soon. He didn't want a relationship, and neither did he expect one from me. But there was something between us that neither of us had acknowledged. Attraction. Anger. Curiosity. Years of tension that had never found anywhere to go. His proposal was simple: one night together, no strings attached, and then we would return to our separate lives and go back to hating each other. I stared at him as if he had lost his mind. Yet beneath my anger was something I didn't want to admit. I had wondered about him too. Not about the arrogant executive everyone saw, but about the lonely man behind him. I told myself that accepting would be a mistake. I told myself it meant nothing. I told myself I could walk away the next morning without looking back. But sometimes the heart hears every warning and chooses to step forward anyway. That night, we didn't become the enemies everyone expected us to be. We sat across from each other in a quiet restaurant, and for the first time, we talked without trying to win. Daniel told me about his father, who had spent years telling him that failure was unforgivable. He admitted that every promotion, every award, and every victory had been his attempt to prove he was worthy of being respected. I told him about my mother, who had raised me alone and taught me that depending on anyone was dangerous because people eventually left. The more we talked, the more the walls between us began to disappear. By the time we left the restaurant, the city was covered in rain. We walked beneath one umbrella, laughing at how ridiculous our arrangement suddenly seemed. There was no hatred left in that moment. Only two lonely people discovering that they had been fighting the wrong battle all along. I won't describe what happened after we reached my apartment. Some moments don't need to be explained to be understood. What mattered wasn't what happened physically. What mattered was what happened emotionally. For the first time in years, I allowed someone to see the frightened part of me that I usually hid. Daniel held my hand and didn't make a joke. He looked at me as though I was something precious rather than another opponent standing between him and success. When morning came, sunlight spilled across the room, and reality returned. The agreement was supposed to be simple. One night. Then back to hating each other. Daniel stood near the door, wearing the same expression he had worn when he first arrived. But something was different. His eyes were softer. Before leaving, he told me that Monday would be exactly as we had planned. We would return to work, pretend nothing had happened, and continue our rivalry. I nodded, even though my heart was already breaking. Monday came, and Daniel wasn't at work. Neither was he there Tuesday. On Wednesday, I discovered the truth. He hadn't simply taken another position. He had resigned after uncovering evidence that senior executives had intentionally sabotaged our client account to manipulate the company's financial reports. He had taken the blame long enough to gather proof, knowing it could destroy his career. Then I found an envelope on my desk. Inside was a letter. Daniel had written that the night we spent together had made him realize something terrifying. He had spent his entire life believing love was weakness because his father had taught him that attachment gave people the power to hurt you. But after meeting me, he understood that perhaps love wasn't about losing control. Perhaps it was about finally having someone worth trusting. He also wrote that he hadn't told me everything because he wanted to protect me. He had given the evidence to the authorities and accepted that his career might never be the same. At the bottom of the letter was one sentence that made my heart stop. He said he had never wanted one night. He had only been afraid to ask for forever. Months passed. I rebuilt my career, helped expose the corruption, and eventually received the promotion I had worked so hard for. But every success felt incomplete because there was one person I wanted to share it with. Then, one cold evening, I walked out of the office and saw him. Daniel was standing across the street. No expensive suit. No confident smile. No competitive expression. Just Daniel. The man I had hated. The man who had become my closest friend without either of us realizing it. He told me he wasn't there to make another arrangement. He wasn't asking for one night, 1 month, or one temporary promise. He wanted something much harder. He wanted a chance to earn my trust every day. I looked at him and realized that love had never arrived like a grand announcement. It had arrived quietly, hidden inside arguments, late-night conversations, painful truths, and one reckless decision made by two people who were terrified of what they actually felt. Sometimes the person who challenges you the most isn't sent into your life to defeat you. Sometimes they are there to teach you that beneath every wall is a heart waiting to be understood. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Your support helps these emotional stories reach people who may need a little hope today. And before we end, tell me in the comments, would you have accepted Daniel's one night, no strings arrangement, or would you have walked away? Because sometimes the greatest love stories don't begin with, "I love you." Sometimes they begin with two people saying, "I don't need you," while secretly praying that the other person will stay.